when a lonely soldier in Vietnam sent a note to his bank account back in South Bend, addressed to anyone who might read it. Dozens of bank employees sent him cards and letters, and then launched a public campaign they called Operation Mail Call for all the other soldiers from the region who might also be lonely. If this is the story of a bank, it's a bank unlike any other, a place founded upon principles, guided by men and women who never forget what it means to be an integral part of the communities we've lived in and helped shape for over 150 years. Decades of straight talk, sound financial advice, consistently focused on the best interests of the people, the businesses, and the communities we serve, helping to build good places to live, work, and raise families. This is the story of the people who've made First Source Bank what it is today, and why those same founding principles will serve the men and women of this organization and the communities they serve so well for the next 150 years. Just a few days after the Gettysburg Address, the First National Bank of South Bend opened at the corner of Main and Washington. South Bend's own Congressman Schuyler Colfax, who within a few years would be Vice President of the United States, was one of the early shareholders. But when fire destroyed the original location, the bank purchased the old State Bank building at Michigan and Colfax, where it stayed for 35 years, until moving into the elegant new Oliver Hotel in 1900 back at the corner of Main and Washington. In 1923, the bank strengthened its partnership with the Union Trust Company by moving into the same building at the corner of Michigan and Jefferson. 5 years later, on its 65th anniversary, the bank had $16 million in assets, a strong balance sheet, and celebrated by becoming the first in the city to replace teller cages in favor of the more friendly counter system we're familiar with today. The entire country was on a roll, nowhere to go but up. That is, until the crash. The beginning of America's Great Depression. Here, 11 of the city's 18 banks would close for good in less than 3 years. When the president of First National Bank suddenly died, E.M. Morris was asked to step in and help merge the bank and Indiana Trust Company into one new entity. Though not a stockholder, Morris was a visionary. 14 years earlier, he'd started a company that pioneered auto loan financing. The company, called Associates, would one day become one of the largest independent finance companies in the entire nation. But for now, Morris would put his energy behind making sure that the new bank made it through the Depression. Together, he and Vincent Bendix put $500,000 each into the First Bank and Trust to ensure that the balance sheet stayed strong. And at the height of the Depression, when Franklin Roosevelt declared a national bank holiday, First Bank and Trust was the first in the city cleared to reopen without any restrictions. In 1940, the bank moved to one of the most modern and beautiful buildings in the country, featuring the city's first drive-up, first night deposit box, and began the first year of telephone service for time and temperature.
The time will be 8:20.
A service so popular, it still gets 2.7 million calls every year.
First Source Bank time, 10:44. Current temperature,
The 50s
76 degrees.
were both a time for major expansion in branches and services, and for mourning the loss of E.M. Morris, chairman of the bank and of the Associates. Morris's son-in-law, Robert L. Orr, was elected to succeed him as chairman of both. Upon his death, Dr. Oliver C. Carmichael Jr., husband to Morris's youngest daughter, Ernestine, was elected chairman of both companies. Just 2 years later, Studebaker Company closed after 111 years of operation in South Bend, leaving 7,000 men and women unemployed. Under Carmichael's leadership, the bank led a campaign to revive the local economy, deferred loan payments for many former Studebaker employees, and made loans to help many get through the transition period. 5 years later, Gulf and Western acquired the associates, and as a result, First Bank. But in 1971, Carmichael led a group of local residents to return the bank to local control by exchanging their Gulf and Western securities for First Bank. Upon the untimely death of Dr. Carmichael himself in the summer of 1976, Ernestine was elected chairman of the board.
So I thought, no one cares more about this bank than I do in success. And so I came on down and started, and then asked Chris Murphy to join us, and that was the most fortunate thing I could possibly have done.
And in 1977, Chris Murphy, son-in-law of Ernestine, who'd been with the company for several years, was elected president and CEO. That same year, the company began focusing on building a national specialty financing capability, and the business continued to reinforce the value of community leadership, economic development, education, workforce training, and the company's roots as a local bank, committed to the success of everyone who lives and does business here.
Certainly I want somebody 150 years from now looking back and saying they were true to their values, because it's living those values that creates a sustainable institution for the future.
A customer came up and said, I just want to tell you, it's an honor to be a customer of First Source. And I think that touches me too, because that says a lot.
If we maintain our integrity throughout that period, we'll be here. We clearly have to work as a team, and they continue to work as a team to provide outstanding client service, outstanding customer service, which is a third one, that we make sure we continuously improve the quality of what we do, that there's a never-ending journey to improve the quality of what we do, and then that we're in leadership of the communities we serve.
By the end of the decade, the bank will introduce an early version of the ATM card and break ground on a bold new company headquarters in downtown South Bend. Then in 1981, First Bank became First Source Bank as a way to distinguish itself as a source for total financial services, and began expanding throughout northern Indiana and southwest Michigan, as well as an expansion of its specialty finance service lines across the country.
Tell people, if you don't love being of service to others, you shouldn't be here. Go somewhere else. Because that's all we do. We serve others. And I think what makes us distinct and unique is our people.
Keeping the client's best interests in mind? That's precisely why First Source Bank avoided the real estate meltdown that caused so much heartache in the 2000s. Strong, stable, local, personal. In 2009, First Source was recognized by Forbes as one of the 100 most trustworthy companies in America. And in 2013, by investment bank KBW, again as one of the best banks of the decade. A place where employees volunteer more than 25,000 hours to more than 350 community organizations every year. Always focused on the best interests of the people, the businesses, and the communities we serve.
We do care.
This is a wonderful business to be in. We are at the center of people's lives.
Keeping our clients' best interests in mind.
We take that responsibility very seriously.
With straight talk, sound advice, a legacy of integrity since 1863.
But we also think about how blessed we are.
And a promise that whatever the next 150 years bring,
This last 150 years is nothing more than a foundation for the next 150 years.
However the world changes, we'll always be your partners from the first.